For anyone who believed that the Indians were sincere in signing the Medicine Lodge Treaty, its implications would have seemed breathtaking. The treaty required nothing less than that the great and unrivaled powers of the Middle and Southern Plains move immediately and en masse to reservations and take up modest new lives, accepting agencies, schools and farms, government teachers, blacksmiths, carpenters, and agricultural instructors, all of which they had said specifically and repeatedly that they did not want. They were allowed to leave the reservation to hunt south of the Arkansas, but the treaty really meant that they would have to cease fighting and stop following the buffalo, which in turn meant that they would have to cease being Plains Indians. They would have to reorder their entire social structure around a set of values and principles that were still largely unimaginable to them. The Comanches and Kiowas were to share a 2.9 million-acre reservation in what is now southwestern Oklahoma, north and east of the Red River and its North Fork, south of the Washita, and west of the 98th meridian. This was actually very good land, huntable and arable, and with decent water sources, and it was in traditional Comanche territory and included Medicine Bluffs and other sacred sites. But it was a tiny fraction of Comancheria, which at its peak held nearly 200 million acres. Nor did it include by far the richest of the old hunting grounds, the Texas Bison Plains. The Cheyennes and Arapahoes, meanwhile, only their southern bands, agreed to live on a reservation immediately to the north of the Comanche Reservation. Seen from the distance of a century and a half, the Medicine Lodge Treaty can seem like a cynical document. But it did not at the time appear that way to lawmakers in the East, or to the members of the Peace Commission who signed it. Their efforts had inspired great hope that this would offer a final solution to the Indian problem on the southern plains. This belief was held despite the Indians' stern protestations and the deep skepticism of the Army in the West. After all, the Eastern Indians had made the transition to farming life. The civilized tribes, after the horrendous attrition of the Trail of Tears, had managed to change. So could the Plains Indians. To many people, the treaty seemed a fair and reasonable solution to an old and intractable problem. They were mistaken. Instead, Medicine Lodge provided the framework for the last great betrayal of the Indians by a government that had betrayed and lied to Native American tribes more times than anyone could possibly count. The agent of the betrayal was the Office of Indian Affairs, one of the most corrupt, venal, and incompetent government agencies in American history. The new era began with the bizarre decision by J.H. Leavenworth, the appointed agent for the Comanches and Kiowas and a loud proponent of peace, to locate his agency at Fort Cobb on the Washita River, which was on the reservation of the Wichitas and affiliated bands, well north of the Comanche Kiowa lands. Leavenworth's ill-considered decision introduced warlike mounted Comanches into direct proximity with Indians who farmed and lived in houses. As the Civil War years had shown with cruel clarity, this was a very bad idea.